Hello and welcome back to Conversations for Change. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge that today, unfortunately, we did lose a loved community member, and I would like to take a moment of silence. He was a great guy and had many accomplishments in life, and we will be very, very sad, and he will be very, very missed by everybody in the love community, and the love office, and the love world. Thank you to everybody that participated in that moment of silence. Before we get to today's conversation, I would like to address some format comments that we had. I've gotten some critiques saying that Shawntay Rose talks a little bit too much, and I'm just going to remind everybody, it's conversations for change. Conversations are 50-50, it takes two. I need to speak to be able to get a reaction from the person I'm talking to. I'm sorry if you were expecting a Q&A and an interview. That's not what this is. This is for the youth, by the youth, with the youth, and we talk. And that's just how it's gonna have to be. You can come along for the ride or you can hop off now. So with that being said, today's conversation is with Marvin Okello. Hello.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
How are you today?
I'm great. You know, and I do want to acknowledge, you know, I'm sorry about the youth that you guys lost. I know that you guys are incredibly connected with your network, and just condolences to the family, and rest in peace. Rest in power.
Thank you for that. So my first question for you is, if you really knew me, what is something that I should know about you? Like, what is that? Like, those who come around you could be like, oh, if you really knew me, like 100% knew me, this is what you would know.
It's an easy one, actually. It's one of the easiest things for me to answer is it's the positive energy. I could be going through hell, but I'm always going to exude a positive energy, a positive vibe, and sometimes it's to my detriment, honestly, but that's what I want to put out in the world. I want to be somebody who, when I'm gone, people remember me as, you know, he was always positive. He always looked at the glass half full, you know, and that would...
That's actually, yeah, that's good. With that, I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, you work in the soccer industry. How did that happen? Like, where did that connection start? Like, what age did it start? And do you find it's a passion, or it fell into your lap and you just love it? Both.
You know, it's an interesting question, but it's both. You know, as a 4-year-old in Eastern, you know, African Kenya, I very quickly realized that soccer was not just a passion, because my parents, my dad, and all his uncles were really into it, and the community was really big in soccer. But it was my therapy. It was my first therapy that I ever experienced, honestly, looking back and realizing there was all these crazy things happening in my life at the time.
Yeah.
But soccer was my escape. It was my happy place. So that started very young at 4, and I played it all the time, even when my parents didn't know I was playing it. I was supposed to be doing chores and whatnot.
Hiding,
and so it was from very young age I found this escape from all the harsh realities of life in soccer, in football. You know, we called it back home. But then, you know, when we moved to Canada, I quickly realized, you know, I was actually pretty skilled compared to, like, you know, people in Canada and just in general, because of how often I played it. And again, it's because it was my therapy. So, you know, skip along years, I moved to Nova Scotia after Fredericton. I ended up getting involved in the provincial program, recommendation from my neighbor, friend's dad, but also coach, recommended me for the provincial program at the under 13 level. And I just took off from there, you know, played under 14, 15, 16 provincial, eventually the 2005 Canada Summer Games, played in the first ever suburban men's team that won the league, but then the next year we went to nationals in 2011 and placed 5th in the country.
Wow.
So soccer has been a passion, a love, a therapy for a very long time. So one of the people who I actually played with got hired by the Wanderers as employee number 2, Jamie McGinnis, And so he reached out to me when they were looking for their first ever brand ambassador. And he knew as somebody who loves children, loves just being around people all the time, that, hey, you know, Marvin's probably good for this. So he called me, and I had a full-time job managing Mahone Bay Quality Footwear at the time, but I saw it as an opportunity to get into the field that I love. So I took on that brand ambassador role, the first ever one, and within 2 months, I was hired as the ticket sales manager, and eventually last year took on also the role of diversity and inclusion officer.
Okay, before we get into that, I want to know, why Nova Scotia? Like,
Nova
you
Scotia?
came here, that's understandable. Obviously, opportunity brought you here, you took the opportunity, great.
Yeah.
Why stay? Like, that's a real question. Why stay in Nova Scotia?
For sure. So I was too young to be the one to make any of those decisions, admittedly, when we first came here.
True. Yeah.
So we moved to Canada in '96 in Fredericton, and I was 8, turning 9. And then we moved to Nova Scotia in 2011 when I was 11. So again, way too young for me to be the one contributing decisions, but my parents were in search of opportunities, career opportunities. So Fredericton was great, actually, for a place for us to assimilate. There was actually a large African population there that a lot of people don't know, especially within the UNB umbrella.
Yeah.
So my parents loved that, but when it got to a certain point, their career was halted and they couldn't make any more progress in Fredericton. So my dad got a promotion with the Public Works, and that took us to Sackville, Nova Scotia. And we stayed because there's a lot of opportunities here for disabled minorities and just people in general. There's a lot of opportunities, especially if you're a hard worker, like both my parents are. So that's what got us to stay here. And then there's actually, the diversity here grows every year. You know,
extreme. It's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
I went away for like 4 months and I came back and I was just like, oh, this isn't quiet little Nova Scotia anymore. I don't like this. I just wanted to go and hide.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, where are you from originally?
So I am, nobody's asked me this yet. I was born in Ontario, and in 2006, I was unwillingly brought down here. And I tried to leave twice. It was semi-successful for a couple months, and something just kept dragging me back. And this time, I came back, and I happened to find job opportunities, and then Conversation for Change started, and I was just like, oh, I guess I'm staying in Nova Scotia for a bit. Yeah. So I'm here. I like staying here because of the ocean.
Agreed.
That is like, if I have to say the one thing that keeps me here and the one thing that'll make me come back is the fact that the ocean is right there. Yeah. If it wasn't there, I would leave and never come back.
I agree. And like, I never realized how much I love the ocean because I don't swim very well, admittedly. But the ocean is just so calming. And in the last 5 years, whenever I felt a lot of stress, I have 2 places that I go to. One's on the very end of South Street, by Dal, when you go all the way to the water. That's one of them. And the other is the Dingle on the other side, I find is just very calming place.
See, and I live in Dartmouth, so like that's like a very Halifax answer. I'm like, oh, I go to Lawrencetown Beach.
True.
Oh, okay. It's like, okay. It's like, oh, where else do you go? Rainbow Haven. Oh, okay. Where else? Charles Beach. Yep. Okay. Where else? And I'm just like naming off beaches, and they're like, do you go to any lakes? Nope. Just beach. That's all. It's the ocean.
Is there a reason for that, or?
The waves. The waves crash. Lawrencetown, it's like they crash into the rocks and then they pull the rocks out. So you're hearing the crash of the waves and then like all the rocks hitting each other as they're being pulled. So you get this like loud crash, but then this gentle like floating bubble right after. So it's like it's coming in and pulling everything that's stressing you down and washing it away and wiping it off.
Interesting.
And it just like, that's how it
True. Like, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I feel like it's Mother Nature's way of being like, yeah, calm before the storm or calm after the storm. So
yeah.
Now we're gonna talk about the things you do. And we always say like work is not something we want to talk about, but the things when it comes to making change and making a difference and seeing that there's an issue within our city and our province and our community and making the steps towards that is something we need to talk about. So. Your role now, or one of your roles now, is Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And for me, I don't fully know what it means, and I know a lot of people who are probably watching don't know what it means. So for you, one, why is it needed? What does it mean to be a diversity and inclusion officer? And what are your plans?
Before I jump into that, I was just going to say another main reason that I stayed actually in Halifax is the Wanderers. The year, like months actually before I joined the Wanderers, I was debating moving to Toronto. My younger sister lives there.
That's where I ran off to, by the way. I went back home. I was like, nope. I need to go.
My younger sister lived there, and I was managing the shoe stores, and I was feeling almost like leveled out, and I was getting bored. You know what I mean?
You kind of lost your purpose.
Yeah, I'd lost my purpose, and the Wanderers really fell in great timing in my life where I needed that passion again, you know, and that spark. So when my coworker Jamie reached out, it was incredible because I wasn't about to stay, you know, so the timing was unbelievable. But in terms of what I actually do, you know, it's funny because it's something people ask me all the time, and admittedly, you know, I wasn't that qualified necessarily to be the first diversity and inclusion officer.
Isn't that how most good jobs happen? You just you're like, I'm not qualified for this, but I want to do something.
Somebody, it's nobody's going to do it. I'm going to do it, which is essentially how it happened. You know, watching that George Floyd video the first time, especially, it ripped me apart. Every time I think about it, it honestly gets me emotional again. Like, just feeling what the family must have felt watching that. Imagine you're his daughter, his wife, and you're seeing this for the first time on social media, right?
But then it's also like, this is still happening?
This is still happening, but this is your dad, this is your husband, and it's like, he's a good man, and the first stories painted him in this negative light.
As always.
You know, and
it's the narrative at this point. It's like, if something happens, and even here, if we think about Canada and we think about Nova Scotia, if something happens in a Black community, the first thing, or to a Black person in our community, the first thing is, they were associated with this, or they had recent drug charges.
Or violence.
Yeah,
or
recently
whatever.
got out of jail, all of this other stuff. And it's like, you're missing the point of the person, and you're missing the point of the life that is now lost.
Exactly.
And what's the difference? Why is it any different?
Exactly. So, you know, that was, I heard it really summed up recently by, there's a moment, a motto, and a movement. So that was my moment. You know, the George Floyd, there's been a lot of situations like that have happened, but for me, that was the moment. You know, enough is enough. I need to personally put myself in this world and make sure that I can change something, you know, so.
You're putting your foot down for everybody.
Put my foot down for everybody, and, you know, recognizing that I have a platform with the Wanderers. It was like, what can I do within the Wanderers organization to take this stance that, you know, we don't believe in this. We truly do not believe in racism or any sort of prejudice as a club. Because when you look at our members, at our staff, people who come to our game, it's so diverse. Yeah. It's unbelievable, and which is why I love soccer. It's the world's game. You know, it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to play. All you need is a ball. And even at certain times, you don't even need that. Growing up in Kenya, we would take a ton of plastic bags, roll them into each other,
put bags inside of bags,
an elastic band, you know, and that was our soccer ball, which is why it's the world's game.
I mean, we used to use a basketball as a soccer ball. That was probably not a good idea, but you make do with what you have.
Yeah, you make do. That's the beauty of these things, all right? So it was just, I was like, I sent a message to our entire staff, you know, after really thinking hard about, you know, how do I approach this, you know, and at first I was like, maybe I send a message to my boss, or maybe I sent it, I was like, no, this needs to be directed at everyone in our organization. Like, everyone needs to know that this is how I, as the only Black employee, am feeling. This is how I feel, knowing that there's other Black people out there who are feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, it's not a good feeling, you know, and I said that, I'm hurting, I'm lost, I was lost for words in a lot of ways, but I had looked up, Zoom at that time had just come out with a diversity officer. Oh. And I had researched it, and I was like, you know what does that look like? You know, so I'd sent a couple emails to them.
What is that role, yeah?
Yeah, and I didn't hear back before I eventually sent this message to our team, but I was like, you know what? I want to be, you know, a diversity officer, diversity and inclusion officer. So that was the ask. I said, guys, this is how I'm feeling. I know you guys are all anti-racist because I work with you. I know that you feel strongly about this, but what can we do, and this is what I propose. I will volunteer, if I have to be the first diversity inclusion officer, but I think it's important to have a role that we can, acknowledge that there's things we can do, and so it's been a lot of learning. I've read a lot of books.
This is an area of trial and error. And
Exactly.
Right now we're working off of experience and things that we see that need to be changed, and that's, I guess, the first stepping stone. And I've said it before, Malcolm had his 5 people that were around him. Nelson Mandela had his wife, and Martin Luther King had his. Exactly. And it only took that one conversation, that one step, and then now look at it. We're worldwide. There are people who are known across the globe as change, they make change.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And
exactly.
All it took was a thought. It took a thought and identifying a problem and being like, I'm gonna be the change. Mm-hmm. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the moment, and together we came up with. We'd always had as a club Together from a Ways. That was from year 1 right off the bat, and so the motto when we were thinking, how can we continue this conversation? How can we continue this piece on social justice? Together just made sense, especially having the Together from a Ways initially in our brand motto. So we came up with Together for Change because when I asked myself, what are we trying to do? It's like, well, we're trying to change things.
Yeah.
How are we doing it? Together. So that was the motto that came out of it. And then eventually the movement is multi-headed. We have the podcast. Initially we started with Zooms with our players, with our staff, with our fans. And one of our members, Missy Searle, Lillian Searle, she said something very powerful on that first Zoom call, and she talked about the racism she had felt and experienced at the Wanderers grounds, which to that moment I didn't know and nobody at our club knew. And she was brave, saying this in front of, almost 100 people on that Zoom call that we had. And she cried and I cried and we healed together, and I acknowledged, and my boss Derek was great to acknowledge as well, that we're gonna do our best to make sure that we have a policy in place that doesn't allow this to continue to happen. And because at a certain point you can't end racism today. We wish we could. We wish we could, but you can't. Yeah. So, we said, how can we put it so that we can, if and when something happens, there's something somebody can do immediately. They know there's a phone number to call. Yeah. There's, an usher to reach out to, so that in the moment we can act swiftly to make sure that our fans aren't having to go through that, right? And that to me was the most challenging thing, because I'd only been in the role for a couple of weeks. Yeah.
And you're like, how do I make this what I want it to be?
Exactly.
It's I know what we need, but how do I do it?
Exactly. And you mentioned Mandela, you mentioned MLK, all the greats are greats because they acted. Yeah. They didn't wait, they didn't ponder too long, they just acted. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I didn't even know what my boss was going to say, but I stepped up. I was like, that is never, we're going to...
Well, the worst that could happen is be a no.
Exactly.
And that's it. And then it's just like, well, I'm still going to do it. I have to find a different way.
Exactly. And Derek's been always really supportive. That's our club president and founder. Kudos to him for having faith in me, honestly, to just run with the position and learn and share with the group what we're learning. And it's been an incredible journey, and it's just starting, for anybody who's doing, this type of work, it's a forever thing. And people always ask me, well, how can I be an ally? It's like, continue your own learning.
And I love how you just said that, because that goes right in. That was one of the questions I had. Mm-hmm. How do you be an ally? And we're gonna open it up to a bigger conversation right now. Mm-hmm. How do you be an ally to those who are working with diversity and inclusion, but also in the sense of, I'm going to open up to what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. We know that racism is a thing. We know that blacks are still being killed. We know that even in Canada ourselves, our officers are terrible and do the worst things and get away with it because we're not as open about it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I've had a situation where I know I was discriminated against, and it was unfortunate, but it was a situation that happened. Mm-hmm. And it was one where it was you just get poked and they wanted a reaction. And that's what they do. And they do it purposely so that they have a reason to hurt us. Mm-hmm. So how, as someone one, who's not in our shoes, two, that hasn't seen it like firsthand, and three, isn't our color. They don't, like, how do they be an ally to us? But also in our city, like our city is huge, but it's so small. So how within our city can we just automatically be an ally from the jump and not just wait for something to happen? Like, what's that? What should that look like?
The first step is always education. You know, it's crucial. You know, I was on a call yesterday with the 40 Cups Coffee with the Blue Door Group with Jennifer Montgomery, and there's a lot of small business owners and presidents and execs, and you know, the same question was brought up, and it's, you have to self-educate. Self-educate. Don't go to a black person and say, you tell me about all the things you face. Don't go to a female and say, how are you mistreated? Don't go to an Asian and ask, what are the things you face? It's self-education. You know, and I made the analogy, if you need your grass cut, you don't just call, you know, somebody who you know who cuts, you look, you Google.
Yeah, you buy a lawnmower and you figure out how to use it and you do it yourself.
You self-educate, right? So it's very important to anybody who wants to be an ally that you don't put the burden on somebody else to educate you. You have to self-educate, and it has to be continual. Like, I can't say enough, it has to be continual, because the situations change all the time. You know, we talk about what happened with the HRP getting, you know, more money. You know, we have to continually be educating ourselves and aligning ourselves with these communities in an equitable way, right? And what I mean by that is, don't go to, you know, a black-owned business or whatever and say, hey, I'm here to support your black-owned business. Because at that point, you're doing it to make yourself feel good. You're saying it.
That's like when you're going out and you're like, yeah, I'm shopping here because I'm a white person. I want to help black people. And you're doing it for social media. But any other time, if the phone's not out, if the cameras aren't rolling, you're not there. Like, it's, I mean, if we look at it from the political standpoint, politics do that a lot. They go out there, they go for the photo op, and they leave.
A lot of the people who voted on adding to the police budget said all 2020 they wouldn't. There's a lot of them. I'm not going to name them, but we all know it. They said that they weren't going to support adding any sort of funding to police. But when the actual time came to act and talk the talk and walk the walk, they didn't do it. And that is what you have to do to be an ally. You have to continually talk the talk. You have to continually walk the walk. You have to put yourself in their shoes, in a sense, by going to, you know, the protests that they go to, you know, the markets. If there's a black market, go. And don't say you're there to support a black, just go and support. Everyone needs food.
What about those people that are like, oh, I shared a post, that's enough?
No, it's never enough. It's sharing a post, if you're not gonna follow it up with action and other posts and multiple and continue to do it, it's actually worse than somebody who didn't share a post. But that's because they admitted to themselves that they weren't going to do anything about it after.
Yeah, they were like, it means nothing to me. There's no point. Whereas you were like, oh, this is a serious thing. Let me share it. But that's like, is it that serious to you?
The black square on Instagram. We all saw how many people did and didn't share, you know, and I'm more critical of the people who shared the black square, and then you look at all your other posts that are about the similar topic, they don't like it, they don't share that. It was just the one day, I swear it was for the clout. Everyone, oh, this is the cool thing to do.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And those are the things you can't do if
People
you're trying to be an
hop
ally.
on, like when Black Lives Matter came out heavy, people hopped on that, but it was like, I'm supporting people of color by what? Putting it in your bio on Instagram? And making one post because you wanted to. Like, we have to look at everything. Like, we have a month for our history that, first of all,
it's the shortest month of the year.
One, we get 28, 29 days every 4 years. That's rude, first off. Second, in schools, like, I remember being in school and like the 15th was the only time we did anything. And we would have like a day where we would watch movies in color. And that's what it was. It was a lazy day for teachers. Is literally, it is literally what it was. Like, the only reason why I even learned anything about Black history in school was because, one, well, yeah, I would have to be. But I had a Black teacher, and she was the absolute best. And she was like, yeah, we're going to teach you some real stuff, some knowledge. You're going to know the truth. If you don't mind me asking? I didn't, well, see, here's the thing. I also grew up in North Preston. which is Canada's largest Black Indigenous community. And with that, there's majority Black people. So when I was young enough, it was a very Black school. So like we learned Black stuff and Canadian Black stuff, which was
relevant
great.
Stuff.
Yeah. But then when I switched to not predominantly Black schools, it was on the surface of what American history was. It was only for maybe 3 days out of the month of February, and that was it. And I had to educate a lot of people. And it was a lot of like, I was that kid in school, that little light-skinned child that sat in the corner and went, did you know? Did you know? Did you know? And it was always like a Black history fact. And it got to the point where people are just like, we don't care, shut up. Like, just like, but you need to know it. And it was to the point where you had to find, like I had to find vices for the males in my class of like, did you know basketball is a Canadian sport? They're like, no. It's like, it is.
Yeah, a lot of times Americans try to take our history.
Yeah, I'm like, did you know that?
Hockey.
It's like, everybody knows about hockey because, well, here, Nova Scotia. But even then, they're like, well, is it really Canadian though? And I'm like, yeah. And then there's so many inventions.
Not watch the Heritage Moment commercial? Like,
did you not see the Heritage Minutes? Like, did you not have to sit through those? Did you not hate those like I did? Because you watched the House Hippo commercial, but you didn't watch Heritage Minutes? Come on now. If you don't remember the House Hippo commercial, then I'm sorry.
I swear it's the first commercial I remember seeing when I moved to Canada. It was the first commercial I remember seeing.
Did you think it was real?
I thought it was real. I straight up did. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. They got house hippos? Like,
did you want one?
Killing all kinds of people in Africa. We're scared of them, but like, you guys got these like cute little house hippos? Like,
little pocket-sized hippos?
It was mind-blowing.
It's like, you can live in my closet? What?
I wanted one. I talked to my parents. They're like, Marv, you gotta grow up, man. Those are not real.
How long did it take for you to not believe in the house hippo?
They told me, but it took like a year, I think, after that.
You're like, I need proof. Yeah. I need real proof. But yeah, see, just like the house hippo, like that's how people are with racism and discrimination, and that's like, I'm happy that we can kind of laugh about the house hippo now, but in hindsight, it's like what you're seeing, what's projected, and that's another thing. Like as a Black person, when we deal with the things that we deal with, we are deep rooted to be like, one, don't ask, don't tell. And it's our problem, nobody else's. And what happens in this house stays in this house.
Well, it's important you actually said it, like, that I laugh. You know, people say this a lot about, Marvin, you're laughing a lot. And like,
they say it to me, you smile when you tell your story. I'm proud of where I came from, leave me alone.
But you know, to me, what the opposite is, a lot of times if I wasn't laughing, I'd be crying.
And yeah.
So
and that's
like,
another,
it's a coping mechanism for me. It's what it started with, and I like to laugh, but sometimes it's covering up the feelings that I'm having. And honestly,
I can agree with that. And covering the feelings can sometimes be so much easier and so much better than like actually feeling those feelings.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to being in like the fly in the milk situation, or in my case, like I joke about being light skinned, but it's to the point where it's like I'm too white for the Black people, but too Black for the white people, and therefore I don't fit in.
It's unbelievable. I'll call him my stepson. Last year we were in quarantine together, you know, so I was teaching him from home, and he's half, you know, and you actually share the complexion, is very similar.
Yeah.
And he, at 8 years old, went to school because, you know, all this stuff is in the news and it gets to the kids. And so he went and he asked his friends, white friends, you know, he said, do you see me as white or Black? And his friends were like, well, you're white. Like, what do you mean? He's like, no, like I'm Black. And he's like, yeah, but you don't look Black. He's like, well, I am.
Yeah.
You know, and he feels some type of way about it, you know, and this is why he asked his friends. He's like, I'm proud of being Black. Like, I don't know why you guys might not see me, but I'm telling you, like, I'm Black. And he owns it, right? But for some people, it's not as easy, you know, and I'll be honest, this month has been one of the hardest months of my life. Like, people don't realize how tough it can be having these conversations all the time, every day. You know, having to read about the subject matter every day. There's days,
having to live it.
Have to live it. I a handful of days I've broken down this month. Just had to have a good cry.
It's like, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, on top of that, like, I'm from a community that has so much stigma around it. And when things happen, like shootings and people who are from the community be involved in drugs and illegal things, it's like, how am I supposed to be able to defend the love of my community when publicly everybody just wants to paint this black picture of darkness and hate? Like, black is a beautiful color.
It is.
And in my honest opinion, black looks like purity. It's just like white. Like, it looks pure and calm and serene. Like, when you close your eyes at night to go to sleep, aren't you calm?
Yeah.
Aren't you relaxing? Like, why, when you wake up and your eyes are open when you should be the most aware?
The blacker the berry, the sweeter the
like,
juice, you know?
Exactly. See, you know, but I mean, that's because you are. So it's like, how is it that we look at this beautiful color and these beautiful people, and first of all, we aren't a color, but like, that's another conversation for another day. But
also, one thing, I was talking to Dorico Simons recently, and he said it really well. He said, you know, people always talk about how much of a privilege it is to be a white male.
Yeah.
Right? And like, he's like, I feel so privileged to be black. You know, and that really has been hitting home with me for the last, like, I think he said it a couple of weeks ago, you know, and it's so true. We don't own that privilege enough. It is a privilege to be black. And I'm like, proud to be black.
Oh, and I love the fact that I am mixed, but I hate it at the same time, because I'm one of those mixed people that will prefer to claim my native heritage and my black heritage before the white side of me. And it's only because, like, colonizer no. So I just kind of like leave it alone and just like leave it to the side. But then also it's like the education of how they intertwine with each other. And it's where I'm like, the irony in it is that one side of me messed up another side of me to be able to create another side of me, to have them all collectively come together and be extremely smart people. But also, like, the inventions and the way that people of color think and that we create and the resilience that we have. It's like deep rooted in our blood and in our muscles. And it's just like, I have to be proud of that. Because we had to go through the steps of each part of my life hating my life to be able to get to where we are in the comfort of, I'm proud to be black because, one, we are strong as hell. And we've made it so far, and we've overcome so many things, and we've adapted to, like, being taken from our homes. And that could be literally anywhere, because black people have been taken from every single place you can think of where we are and forced to adapt to something we're not used to. But with that, we became smarter. And not only did we adapt, we experimented. And we understood, like, when we were told no, we said yes. Whereas other people are like, especially with the movement and the momentum that we're going at, if they're like, oh, I'm for people of color, and then somebody knocks them down or is like, no, not really. They're like, yeah, no, I'm not. And they just let it go. Whereas we would be like, yeah, I am, and keep pushing and keep going. Like, they're taking their failure as their failure instead of taking it as a, let me prove to you, actually. And that's, I think, where the whole, like, people coming in and being an ally and understanding where programs need to be and...
How old are you again?
Seeing the difference. I'm an age that's not going to be announced right now.
No, I'm just amazed. Honestly, you're wise beyond your years.
How old do you think I am?
17?
Ha!
16?
I love it. Yes! I look young. I love it. You're off by 5 years? How many years?
Really?
How many? Wait, 75? 5 years? Okay.
You asked?
I was like, wait, am I doing mental math properly? Yeah, you're off by 5 years.
Oh,
I think, no, more than 5. So, how old am I? I'm 24. I'll be 25 this year. So you were off by like 8 years. There we go. Yeah. 8, 9 years. I didn't say I was smart, guys.
I'm honestly, just a lot of kudos to you. You're wise beyond your years. It's incredible.
I'm wise because of experience, and I love it and hate it because it's just like the things that I went through, I wish I didn't have to go through them, but I'd rather me than someone else that can't handle
You
it.
went through them.
Yeah.
That's so key. Like, I've been talking to a lot of people right now, like, everyone's dealing with mental health right now, you know, and that's why I've had a couple breakdowns this month, because it's just because I'm the diversity inclusion officer doesn't mean I'm privy to mental health, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even more so, the opposite, actually. But it's just, it's tough, but you have to be resilient, you know? Growing up in the skin that we're in, you don't have an option, because a lot of people, you know, if they're not resilient, they give up, you know, and it's sad reality that a lot of people don't have the support to be able to continue to be resilient, which, to your question earlier, is what we need to do to be better allies. Whether you are another diversity inclusion officer or not, if you're not involved in it, we have to be more supportive and provide financial support, emotional support, you know, just love to continue to be able to do what we're doing.
Which is, well, you're in the right place. We need love. We're at love, and that's the thing. We always say spread the love, and a part of it is we do, but we spread the love by spreading the knowledge. And we talked about this thing earlier in a meeting that Dennis, and Finley had, and we were just touching on just like how we respect each other and we love each other, and our goal is to spread the love and the awareness, and how where we are with these conversations, it starts in this office and it starts on Godigan Street in Halifax, but we know that it's gonna go past Halifax.
Everywhere.
It's gonna go past Nova Scotia, and I want that. I want it to be to the point where I'm having all of these conversations where in the run of an hour, I'm touching on racism, I'm touching on homelessness, I'm touching on mental health. I love that. Yeah. Because one, we're starting a conversation. Two, there's a lot of people who try to ignore a lot of things. Definitely. And I'm gonna just knock that out real quick.
You're leaving an impactful legacy.
Yeah, and it's it's the impact. And with love, that's what we are. We wanna show that not only are we the change, but we're also progressing that change and
the change you want to see.
Yeah, and share the change you want to see. Like, not only just being it, but sharing it and being the embodiment of it. And as an organization, that's what we are, but also like individually as people within our organization, the youth. Like, we come from all different walks of life, and we all experience different things, and we all have our own things that we don't talk about, that we deal with, that we don't want to deal with. But at the same time, we all sit in a room of different people with different opinions, but we agree, like, there's a change that's needed.
Definitely, and you know, amplify is a word that comes up a lot, you know, and I'm happy to amplify what you guys are doing through the Wanderers platform, because you guys are doing amazing work. You know, Dennis is one of the most incredible people I've met. And he's not just a brother to me, he's like a mentor to me. He's a lot of
those things. Are like my two dads over there.
So, you know, amplifying your guys' message has been, you know, another goal of mine, because you guys have a great one, you know, and that's the main, you know, my own personal motivation is to amplify the voices of other great organizations using the platform that I'm, you know, privileged to have. So I'm really happy to be able to, you know, have these conversations. And I was telling Dennis on our podcast episode the other day, I look at where our podcast reaches, because there's some great analytics, and already there's like 7 states. We're in Texas, we're in Alabama, we're in California, and more recently we broke the UK.
Oh, wow.
You know, and we're pretty much all the Canadian provinces except Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and
haters,
and the territories.
Get on it. Haters.
But it's great to see.
I see you know. Hater.
But it's great to see, like, we're actually impacting change outside of just the local. You know?
And that's exactly what you want to do. Like, you want to touch everybody, and as you said, like, that's our legacy. And it's not only like, this is where it gets bigger than me, because it's bigger than me, and it's bigger than all of us. And the fact that it's like, oh, we can say we have a reach in Texas from Nova Scotia. Like, we're Nova Scotia. Do you know how many Americans don't know what Nova Scotia is?
Exactly.
Like, I have a friend that calls it Nova Scuddy because he can't pronounce it properly. Like,
That's funny.
so it's like, okay. They're like,
Good
where
size,
is that?
boo-boo.
I'm like, East Coast? They're like, is that close to Toronto? I'm like, Toronto's a city. It's not a province. And then when you say province, they're like, a what? It's like a state. It's like a state. I promise.
Oh,
it's like a
it's
state.
pretty bad though. I had an ex like who thought Saskatchewan was in the States. And this is in my 20s. Like, you know what I mean? It was mind blowing.
We didn't say that they were knowledge in Canadian history. We didn't say that. We also need to just let people, if there are Americans listening, we don't live in igloos. We did not come here from our igloos, I promise.
I do want to ask you a question though.
Oh, okay, hi.
Flip the script on you here a little bit. So what is your heritage?
Mixed of, my family doesn't know what they are. So from my father's side, I'm Native and Black. So I don't know if I'm like Caribbean or if we're like African Black. So I don't, that's the like, I'm about to do a 23andMe to figure it out because I
No, I
need to
asked
know.
that because it's a thing. People don't realize like.
Well, then my mom is white. So
Yeah.
it's like, I've had when it comes to growing up in the skin that we're in, I've had my mom, who is very much so white, blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful, I love her. Mom, thanks for giving birth to me. Don't kill me after this. But she wouldn't understand the differences of me walking into a doctor's office and not seeing a Black doctor or a Black nurse. Like, and I love my mother, and now she finally is trying to understand. But back then, when I was younger, there was no understanding because it was just like, it's not like that. You're just overthinking.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because she had grown up around predominantly white people. And it wasn't like you would see the interactions with people of color and white people on a regular basis, so you don't know how it was. And my mother even had to correct herself a couple times. So like it's that kind of situation, whereas my stepdad, the man who raised me, he was closer to your color. So I had my dad that was like, I'm Black and I know what it's like to be Black. So when something happens, I got you. But then with my mom, it's like, did that really happen?
True.
Like, it's how that
Have
really
you ever
happened?
felt somebody like wanted to know but didn't ask? It happens all the time, and like I find it's simple. It's a simple things that go a
Yeah.
long way, right? Like I'll be blunt. More white people need to just ask. If you don't know where somebody's from, if you don't know their heritage, just freaking ask.
Well, some
It's so
people,
easy.
like, I've had to go up to people and be like, first glance, what do you think my ethnicity is? And some people are just like, I don't know. So other people are like, you're half breed. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
And then
we've
other
all learned
people-
what happens when we assume.
Yeah, and then other people would be like, oh, you're Native. Like, straight off the bat, like, no question, no nothing. And I'm just like, what if I told you I have 5 known ethnicities? And then they're like, 5? Why do you have 5? Because I'm a mixed child. That is
Yeah,
why. My mother called me
exactly.
Heinz 57 for a reason, a little bit of everything. So, like, growing up, it was that's how it was. It was just, my mom used to sing this song, they call me mellow yellow, just butter it, because my skin is yellow. And, like, I grew up singing that and being like, they call me mellow yellow. And I go, just butter it. And, like, just dance. Like, that's how it was. And
That's awesome.
even though my mother is a white woman, she, like, in her own way taught me how to embrace who I was. And all her children are Black, so we just had to embrace the fact that we're Black. Whereas, like, my sister she passes as white. And it's like, we know she's Black and she's had the same experiences as me, like the same discriminatory experiences. And it's because she has dark hair and dark eyes. She's not the ideal of, like, if you're white, you have blonde hair or brown hair, or you have blue eyes or green eyes. And if you do have brown eyes, they're light brown eyes. Nah, she got the Black eyes like Black people. She got the Black hair like Black people. So it's like, you can tell that she's mixed,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, are you really mixed or are you like Italian or something?
Yeah.
So, like, we dealt with that growing up. And it was great, but also at the same time, it's like, this is horrible. Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't want to have to be living in this life. Like, I remember when I was younger, I used to say, I wish I was like my mom. And people would be like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I wish I was like my mom. Like, what do you mean by like your mom? You know, just a little bit lighter and maybe, you know, like blonde hair. And I'm like thinking about getting blue contacts and like, why? Just like,
You wanted to blend.
yeah. And I was like, I do.
You didn't want your skin to be such a topic of conversation all the time.
And like, then we talked, like earlier I had a conversation with a love youth that she should be here tonight. Unfortunately, she isn't. And we were talking about code switching. And that also brought into play of like, when I'm on the phone and I walk in a room, a lot of people are like, I didn't expect you to look like that. And one time I went, did you expect me to be white?
Yeah.
And they went, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, well, I am halfway. Like,
I actually had a great interaction with somebody 2019 who similarly, but it was over email. It was one of our season ticket holders, and God love them. They're a bit older. They're celebrating their 79th birthday actually in a week or two. And over email, you know, I try to go above and beyond for customer service, and I help them. They're not tech savvy, and they're like, we can't figure out the mobile tickets. And I tried to the point I was like, I'll print your tickets for you.
yeah,
And
just make it easy for everybody.
exactly. And they over email, you know, were like, by the way, Marvin, like I just saw like a picture of you. I was very surprised to find out you're black. Like at first I was like, what?
That's like my favorite thing is when they're like, you don't sound black. It's like, how do black people sound?
And I didn't get defensive. I was like, oh yeah, like why? Why did you not think I was black?
I think about that all the time. I'm like, you didn't, how come? And they're just like, you don't sound, how am I supposed to sound? I'm so curious. Like, my mom used to say that, well, my sister and my mom, one of my favorite words when I was younger was why. I was always questioning everything, and I still do. My favorite word in question now is why. And
it's an important question that needs to be asked more.
yeah, and a lot of smart people, I can't cuss, smart people say why is a crooked letter that can't be straightened. That doesn't answer my question. That is being sarcastic. That is rude. But it's like, I need to know more. It's like, why? Why do you think I sound like a white person? Why do you think that I fit into that category? And then not only why, but how? How should I sound to you? Like, if you feel that I shouldn't sound this way, correct me so I can speak to you in the proper tone, please. And then we also have like all the situations where we go for interviews, for example. And in the name situation, I'm lucky where I don't have a black name. Like, first of all, my first name is Shawntay Rose. That alone, the Rose part, that's common in every kind of race. But like, the Shawntay part is kind of just like, who? First of all, my mother didn't have a name for me for 3 days when I was first born. She thought I was a boy. It didn't come out that way. That was a whole story. Fair. So that was a thing. And then it's just, like, my last name is Dan. That's such a plain last name.
But honestly, think about how you felt the need to, or the want at one point to have blue eyes and blonde hair and whatever, right? So honestly, from a lot of parents' perspective, they're doing you a favor to help you blend in by giving you.
Oh, my mother refused. No, my mother, so my mother's, I guess she wanted us to be creative because all of us have 2 first names. I think she got lazy with me because I don't have a middle name and my other 2 sisters do. So I kind of feel, thanks, Mom. I feel left out.
But it's hard to blend, though, for these, a lot of people who have a black name or whatever, they don't even need to be seen to be, you know,
to be stereotyped, yeah. And then,
right?
and that's where I was like, I'm lucky that I do have a white mother who didn't think of those outrageous names of like.
My family sounds like a white family until you get to my dad, right? It's, my younger sister name's Diana.
That's my mom's name.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's my mom's name.
Then it's me, Marvin. My older sister's name is Donna. My older sister's name is Emma. My mom's name is Florence. So
that was my grandmother's name. Yeah.
And then you get to my dad, it's Zephaniah.
Oh, okay. That's different. That's different.
It's on purpose, right? Like, they want to give their children the most chance to blend in and not have to deal with racism and stereotype just even because of people realizing the name is, oh, this person must be black. And, you know.
I think my mom unconsciously did it because I don't think at that point she had known the actual things that we would probably go through, because as we know in Canada, racism is there. It's just not as there.
Yeah.
It's not in your face like it is in the States. It has been, don't get me wrong, but it's not half as much. And I think my mom subconsciously did that for us in the sense of, I'm saving you this heartache of having to have these issues. But then it comes with my name is great. I'm happy I have a white name, but then it's just I still gotta work 10 times harder because I don't look like my name.
Yeah, but at least you didn't have to work 20 times harder because you had a black name.
Yeah, and that's where I'm grateful. And I'm lucky because I did get more opportunities because of the fact I'm a few shades lighter. I did get more opportunities because my name is not of a black person's. And I used to take it for granted because I never understood it. But now I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am so much more grateful to be a person of color. And that's only because one, we are beautiful as a people, and two, because the amount of great things that we do, that we have done, that we are going to do.
And we haven't even gotten credit for a lot of it.
Yeah, and that we're starting to get credit for, and people are saying, hey, come here, where's my credit at? Where's my name on this? And that just makes me even happier, because the more we see the firsts, or the next, or we see women, and we see women of color, and especially black women. We say people of color, and that's such a broad umbrella of people, but when we look at black people specifically, the opportunities that we haven't had, but the successes that we've had are amazing.
They are. I got an interesting thought. Knowing everything about your name and the benefits and the negatives of it, what would you want to name your child if you had a visibly boy and girl? I'm really curious.
I actually kind of pre-chose names for when I have a kid, and it's because I do want to be a mother. That's one of my life goals, is to have children, and I made the choice automatically. If I have a boy, they're named after their father, and that's just because I always wanted a junior. And so it'll most likely be either a junior or a second, because the first name would be of the fathers and the middle name would be my father's, because my father passed away a few years ago. So to honor him, thank you, to honor him and the love that he gave me, I would name my child after them, hoping they get those qualities. And then I also have a sister that passed away, and I chose at a very, very, very young age that I was yep, right away. You're named after my sister. You get the same first name, no middle name, my last name, that's that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And every time I get into a relationship where we get to that point of do we want kids? The conversation is names, and I'm first of all, you can have the boy. I don't care. The boy is yours. Don't touch my baby girl. Don't touch my baby girl. My future child, my future daughter, she's mine. Her name is mine. You can't call her nothing but her name unless we come up with a nickname that we like. And other than that, no.
True.
So,
I'll be honest, I'm really conflicted.
Why?
Because of everything we just talked about. Having a black name, what they have to go through from that. But also having a white name, it's so hard to balance the need and the want of the two.
I feel like the representation is different within naming children. And if I want multiple children, kind of, sort of, maybe sometimes, not always. Sometimes I want one, other times I'm maybe 3 won't be so bad. And I think about I got the 5-minute warning, that's what that was. I think about how you should embrace your uniqueness. And the strength that comes with having a different name. And that's the thing, my name may not be black, but not many people have 2 first names. 1. 2, I'm not hyphenated, and that's a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
But there's a space in my name. So it's literally 2 first names put together with a space in between. And that is unique in itself, and the amount of times that I have to correct people when they're oh, Shawntay, and I'm no, Shawntay Rose. It's the exact same thing as when someone has...
Yeah, that was my bad. I said it when I came in, right off the bat.
And Finley's yeah, me too, I do it all the time. And I'm okay with it, because all my life I've been called Shawntay, so it's you say
You're
Shawntay.
You're not used to saying 2 names back to back.
Well, I'm used to hearing Rose. So when I hear Rose, I'm huh? when I hear Shawntay Rose, I'm also like, is my mother in the room and am I in trouble? And then when I hear Shawntay, it's like, okay, what person who thinks they know me like that is calling me Shawntay?
Yeah, well, it's true. Like, I just feel like conflicted because, you know, it's, how do you want this child to start a life, right? Like, it can be such a heavy burden to carry, you know, with having a black name and having to, people know that you're black before they even see you, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's tough because you don't know how strong that child's going to be. Because some people are strong and they can deal with it, some people can't.
That it goes from like, at that moment, and this, I gotta be our last thought, sadly, we think about the energy that we give to other people and the energy that we give to ourselves. And we talk about how when you think good, you become good. And when you think bad, you become bad. So it's the same thing. When you're speaking to your child and when you're coming up with your child's name, the thought that you have in that process is a thought that's gonna associate with it and it's gonna follow that child. So if you're saying, I want my child to have this unique name so they can be unique and this can show their uniqueness, then automatically you're giving that to them. That's the gift you gave with that name. And then also it's the actual like connection of physically raising your child and watching them grow and helping them develop, and it's everything you're giving to them.
What's your age again? I can't.
I might be low key 50. We don't know. Okay, so this is our conversation, and we could talk for hours. So with that, I know a lot of people are saying, "Hey, how can I start a conversation, and what does it look like to have a conversation?" And our main thing is you have to be ready, willing, and able to say when you are wrong, just like when you mispronounced my name and you accepted that. And then you have to always finish what you started. You come into this conversation and you started that conversation. If it gets to a point where you're uncomfortable or something is said that you don't necessarily agree with, you kind of put on your big person panties and deal with it, because you're not going to have the same opinion all the time. But you got to finish that conversation. You always finish what you started.
However awkward, however uncomfortable.
Yep.
Especially when it's awkward and uncomfortable.
Because that's exactly where you want the change. When it becomes awkward and uncomfortable, it's like, oh, I need to check myself.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's just like, you have to come in and get what you came for, but also give what you expect to get.
Yeah.
So with us, we're sitting here, and every time we have a conversation, we're trying to get each other's understanding and opinion.
Yeah.
And we're trying to see through each other's eyes and all of everything. So that's exactly what it is. You got to get what you came for. I came for your opinion. I came for your openness. And you came to talk to me about this and get, one, my personal opinion, but also the opinion of those around me and my peers, because that's how we make a change and that's how we make a difference. And it's the same with everybody else who's watching, who's going to continue their conversation and have their next conversation. They have to follow the same guideline. Like, you have to be willing to learn. You have to be understanding. You have to have these things, because if you're not, one, actively listening, actively learning, actively wanting to digest, it's going to be useless and you're just wasting your breath.
Exactly.
So that's how I feel about that, and that's your guideline, people. Go and have a conversation.
Awesome.
So with that being said, who is your next conversation?
My next conversation? I have a lot, honestly. I don't even know which one to promote right now, but one of them is going to be with Pa Maduka, who's the coach of Pacific FC. He's gone through all of it his whole life, and he's very outspoken.
And when's that?
That's going to be coming out later this weekend.
On your podcast?
Yeah, on the Together
Do you want to
for
plug
Change.
yourself in real quick?
Pardon me?
Do you want to plug yourself in real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely check out the Together for Change podcast. It's now on Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, and soon to be on Apple Podcasts. We just have, like today, real conversations with the aim of breaking down barriers and strengthening a culture of diversity and inclusion.
With that being said, if you would like to help support I Love Youth, I Love Community, and Love Nation, please go and find us on all social media platforms. Instagram, Love Nova Scotia. Facebook, Love Nova Scotia as well. Twitter, Love Nova Scotia. And our website, www.lovenovascotia.ca. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.